the siding, they're having some problems with those stuff. Hey, Madison.
Hello, Madison.
Hello.
How are you
How are you?
today?
Pretty good. How about you guys?
We are doing great.
Doing good. So far, so good. We're just
that's good.
talking about the difference between a large luxury house and a smaller home.
Oh,
And I was telling Zayeb that the fact that I hate to say it, but the more wealthier people, the more likely they are to sue over something frivolous or try to get something over something frivolous.
oh wow.
Like chip tile and stuff like that. You're more likely to get in trouble with a mansion than you are a little
Hey,
beat up
John.
house.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Hey, John.
Hey, John.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
John, we were just talking a little bit. Zabe had a question about the difference between what is it like doing $1 million mansion and then a regular home. And I was explaining that the chances of litigation against you for missing something, maybe even something frivolous, are much higher in people that have that kind of capital that's to hire an attorney at drop of a hat. Oh, we lost John. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Now we'll give John a second to come back on, but yeah, I did it was a big house today. It was about 4,500 square foot with a basement.
Wow.
It was houses here that large normally are cement board or hardy board wood exterior, and it was big. It was big today. But we'll just get started on John. You missed out. Did you see the video that we made last week?
No, I did not.
All right, it's available on the webpage, but I'll send you a copy also.
Okay, perfect. Perfect.
Today we're just going to take up where we left off, and we're talking. We were talking about doing some of the interior inspections, but we left off right before we were going into the laundry. One thing to always check in the laundry: if it is on a second floor, always recommend to the customer that they check with their insurance company to see if a pan and a floor drain is required. That's a friendly thing you might want to just tell your customer. Say, hey, second floor laundry, we recommend you check with the requirements of your insurance company before you close on this. And here in South Carolina, they're not required to, builders not required to put a drip pan or a floor drain on a laundry in a second floor. That's if it's second floor laundry, but some of our insurance companies do require it. And it could be a horrible mess up there. Something goes wrong. When you go into laundry, always check laundry valves, make sure they're ball valves. If they're not ball valves, if they're gate valves, recommend an update, an upgrade. Also recommend that they have the resistors on them. Resistors for water hammer, so you don't get that water hammer when the washer's cutting off and on.
Right.
Don't touch the valves. Don't open them. If they're capped, don't mess with them. Just report them how you find them, okay? I've had a disaster before. I simply went and to turn on a gate valve to see if I could get a little water flowing. And I flooded the laundry. It was bad. It didn't damage anything, but I was mopping up for quite a while. Report to the client if it's gas or electric dryer. Check the vents. Check the electrical outlets. Now, here in South Carolina, it's really important. Say if a house has been flipped, we have a lot of houses here, a lot of older mill houses that did not have a laundry room in them, and they built these little sub laundry rooms in the back of them. You know, they got a little attached porch or something like that. They put the laundry there. Report if it's a 3 or 4-prong dryer outlet. But if it's a flip, I really recommend that you take your voltage meter and test the voltage on it. Not only test the voltage on the dryer outlet, test the voltage on the washer outlet too, because sometimes they'll link the two and you'll actually have 220 going to the regular dryer outlet, the regular washer outlet, which is only supposed to be 120. But check that dryer vent too. Make sure that it's in good shape. Your lines coming in here. Well, same thing with the laundry type deal here. They a lot of times they'll run a set of lines straight up from the floor, straight up to the wall, and protected, mounted to the wall. Always report those being unprotected and could be damaged, because you know it sounds crazy, but laundries have been my headaches. Basically entire time I've been inspecting, laundries have been my headaches. You know, where we talked the other day about never turning on the water to the system, never turn on power for a realtor or anything. It should be on before when you get there. I've gotten there before, reported to, you know, the client that the water wasn't on. Some agents have come in, turned the water onto the house. It's flooded the laundry 2 or 3 times. And that's why we don't touch valves and stuff like that. Let me just pop this open real quick. Sorry about that. I'm doing screen share.
Do they require it? They require you to be hard piped out of the dryer, or is there any flex piping permitted where you go?
I'm sorry, what's that, John?
Do they require a hard pipe for the dryer vent?
Yes,
Or
you should have
no
a,
flex pipe?
they all should be hard piped, just for the fact that they are going to break. The bottom line is they're going to break, okay? And you don't want to be held liable for that stuff. Just trying to share this. Oh, wrong one. Sorry about that, folks. Okay. My mistake. I hit the wrong button. Okay, this is the one we want. All right. Yeah, report if they're gate or ball valves. Never touch them if they're capped. Check if it's a 3 or 4-prong outlet or if it's a gas supply. And ensure that it has metal piping. This it can be the rigid metal flexible piping. It cannot be foil and it cannot be paper.
Plastic.
Yeah, that little plastic one. Yeah, that's all waiting just to burn your house down. So you take care of your clients, report that. Report if it's dirty too. If you just look outside and it's a dirty mess, have them clean it. Okay. Now, once we're done with that. We're pretty much done with the interior. Next place I recommend to go to is the attic, okay? When you get to the attic, you want to observe just a few common rules. One, report what kind of hatch it is. Side hatch, or a pull down, or a scuttle hole. Scuttle holes can be a little difficult at times. A lot of times the scuttle holes are painted shut. They might be incredibly small too. I've had them the size of a laptop, maybe 12 inches by 10 inches, about the size of a dryer vent almost. And I've squeezed up in there. But one big thing is when you go to open the dryer vent, open attic hatch, pause for a minute, okay? Pause for a minute. Good friend of mine just today had a family of raccoons, 6 raccoons living inside the attic.
What a mess.
Right. Cool.
That's something you don't want. You stick your head up there. You don't want a mad mama raccoon running at you. Okay.
No.
Um,
Did he drop the hatch back down again?
yeah, he stopped and he bailed out for a little bit. Okay. Hold on one second. I'm gonna go back and share another screen. Okay. Now, when we're checking out the attic, identify the hatch type, identify if it's insulated too. You're gonna check it out, pull it down. A lot of times there will be a insulation cover to the side, or it might be a tent. Take your time out, open it carefully for exactly the same reason. Check your attic lights, make sure you test them. Make sure they're identifying a cage, identify the bulb type, a lot of times you'll run into these CFLs, the curled lights that look like a little pigtail. Recommend those be replaced. Also make sure that the attic light has some kind of security cover over top of it too. If it's powered with a drop cord, report that it is a safety hazard. Also, when you're preparing to traverse or move around an attic, it's just like a ladder. Always have 3 points of contact at all times when you're moving. Feet, 2 feet, 1 hand, or 2 hands and 1 foot. I like to use my my headlamp when I'm up in the attic. Also, I always wear a respirator when I'm in the attic too. There's a lot of molds up there, a lot of flying insulation. You don't want to be too confident. I've had pneumonia from doing home inspections, not wearing my respirator at times.
Oh,
I'm not sure if I caught it in a moldy attic or I caught it in a moldy crawl space, but I caught pneumonia and was hospitalized for about a week. Identify your type of insulation while you're just standing up there on the landing. Also make sure the landings are nailed down. You got some of these board landings, they're not properly nailed down. You could end up going through the roof or through the ceiling. So be very careful when you're doing it. When you're looking around at the wood, if it's an older house, identify it. If it's been creosote treated, it's a brown looking type lumber. Normally it's on things prior to 1940. I've seen as late as 1960 here. Creosote treated lumber. can cause cancer if it is cut, mutilated, sawed, reduced to a powder, with any kind of saw, drill, anything like that. It gets in your lungs, it can cause cancer. It's kind of like about the same as asbestos. It's not active if it's not being cut, chewed up, sawed on or anything like that, but it can cause cancer. Now, when you check it out, identify the type of insulation. You can see the insulation here on the screen. It's small brown pebbles. It almost feels like styrofoam. It is vermiculite. Any vermiculite that has been placed there prior to 1978 is possibly full of asbestos. Got to report that. What I normally do if I see it, I'll put a small sample in a baggie. Either I have it tested for the client, ask them if they want me to have it tested for a fee. That way you're safe. There's other kinds of insulation. There's either batten, which is the large chunks of fiberglass you see. Mineral wool, which also comes in a batten. And most of the time it's a yellow in color. And there's rock wool and mineral wool, which is ground up. Most of the time it's gray or yellow in color. That's an older style stuff. There's cellulose, brown cellulose, white cellulose. There's recycled cotton. And just keep an eye out. Make sure you try to identify it best. You may have to dig through it just a little bit to see if there's multiple layers of different styles of insulation. They have a bad habit here of trying to conceal the vermiculite. So they'll put another crushed style or blow-in style insulation over the top of it, and you'll never notice unless you dig. Last is the spray foam. Spray foam comes in two different types. It's either open cell or closed cell. And it's pretty easy to identify. The closed cell is heavier. It almost has no openings in it. It's more like a slab of rubber than it is a sponge. Okay. There's no open cells in it. It's much heavier. The disadvantage of those two is closed cell is water repellent. That way, if you have a roof leak, the water gets stuck in between the roof and the closed cell foam, and it rots the roof out.
And Bill, it's sprayed on the bottom of the actual rafter and the decking, not
Right.
on the ceiling.
Right, absolutely. And that way the attic actually becomes a controlled airspace. You'll see it in a lot of newer homes. The attic becomes a controlled airspace, and you don't have to have a lot of the same regulations you do for sealing around the lights and stuff like that, can lights and stuff like that. You got to identify the construction type. Either it's going to be rafters, it's going to be the prefabricated trusses with the plates, gusset plates, or it's be a combination of the two. I've seen a lot of combination roofs here. Most time you'll see that in some of the more integral hip style roofs. Now,
Bill in Greenville, are you guys in a hurricane area?
no, we're not in a hurricane area.
Okay.
That we don't have to have the hurricane type bands and trusses,
Right. Design.
Right. When you're looking at trusses, try to identify the size of the board. Most of the time they are 2x4s here. And you got to identify any cracked webbing, any missing gusset plates. If there's any repairs, the broken member should be sandwiched in between to repair our sister type joists, and they should be at least bolted on each side. I recommend they be bolted on each side. Here they can get away with nailing, but 3 nails on each side, and it's got to be at least, I recommend 1/2 the entire length of the sister truss or the broken section of the truss. Also check for your lateral bracing. A lateral brace is a single board which attaches most of the trusses together. It's a common nailing point. You can see right here. That's a lateral truss. Sometimes they are nailed in at angles. You'll see them at angles. A lot of times you'll see that towards the end. You'll see one angled so it can get the end truss and then still save you some room for moving around. Any questions about checking out trusses?
Mm-mm.
I like walking at the inside the V when I'm going across trusses. That seems like the
So-
safest place to go.
What if I've noticed some attics don't have insulation. Is that okay?
No, here in South Carolina,
Hmm.
if it doesn't have spray foam in the ceiling or
Nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
anything at all, it should be reported. Here, actually, that's supposed to be reported by the heat and air guy.
Okay.
The heat and air guys here, especially on a new install, they're required to
Put insulation.
right. They're required that for the fact that how hard the unit's going to run. It uses too much BTUs, runs up the bill. You know, they're going to be looking for somebody to blame.
Madison, is this a new home or an older home?
No. An older home and remodeled homes. I've
Okay.
been into some attics and I see sometimes no insulation at all.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
that part of the building code, that should have been, I mean, that's
Yeah.
the energy code.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's here. It's required to be at least an R30. I know in some other states R40, even R60 in some northern states.
Or sometimes I'll see like pieces of insulation all over the place.
Yeah, your insulation should be uniform in coverage too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here in the South, we're not required to have it over non-habitable spaces. So if part of the attic goes across a garage or maybe a front porch, it's not required.
So Bill, if you walk into a truss roof and you go up into the attic and you see it has no walk boards at all, how far in will you go?
Has
Good
no what now?
question.
I didn't hear you.
How far in, if you went up into an attic scuttle or into up a set of stairs and there was no walk boards at all, how far will you straddle over those trusses inside that attic?
Oh, I go all the way across.
Do you really?
Yeah, some of our larger companies and our won't do that. They'll won't go any farther than the either the landings or if there's a walk board up there or the walk board. I'll go all the way across. If it's a truss, I have no problems just straddling trusses. Like I said, keep 3 points of contact at a time and just keep going across. That's why, the reason I walk inside the V or inside the supported area is because you never know where somebody might have cut the bottom cord And you
Sure.
could go through, so I always try to stay in the V's.
So you step on top of the escutcheon plates?
Yeah, I've never had a problem stomping on one or breaking one.
Okay.
Uh, I've seen people, not inspectors, but I've seen the crews put in insulation,
Mhm.
break a gusset plate. I've seen them get cut very badly on a gusset plate
Sure.
too.
Nasty.
What
Yeah,
what about, have you ever been in an attic and people have a lot of storage in there?
yeah.
Yeah,
On
yeah.
that, I'll try to get my around it, but if it's totally
Yeah,
impossible,
yeah.
just write it up as inaccessible. Because we talked the other day about before I go to an inspection, I'll always send them a letter asking them to have everything accessible, have all firearms, all valuables secured, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It really helps out.
Yes.
And it gives you a reason. It gives you a reason, valuable reason to back yourself up. Say, I had no access to this. This was, crazy amount of stuff in an attic, and I couldn't access it safely. And if they do move it, I always recommend you charge a fee, at least one half the original inspection fee, if not the entire fee, to go back.
Yeah. What about if they have a lot of stuff under the sink? I've seen that too.
They have what underneath the sink?
Like a bunch of stuff like cleaning supplies and all that. Do you move that?
Yes.
I'll move that out of the way for a little bit, if it's one or two
Yeah.
items. But if it's a ton of junk, no, I won't do that.
Yeah. I see that a lot.
Absolutely. You see that a lot. And you see at closet areas around dormers a lot, that'll be have a lot of junk in them too.
Yeah.
Don't kill yourself in order to do it. Just, take a good photo of it, write it up as not observed, and go on with your business. Continue with the inspection. Now, the big thing is once you go to get down with your trusses, you got these older roofs that are built with a rafter system. Rafters are normally older systems. They are there's a lot more damage in them. Always write them up if there's any lick of possible fire, you see evidence of fire on them, always write them up. The people will tell you if the rafter is 75% solid, it's okay, but you have different problems. I always write them up and recommend they be replaced.
Bill,
Yeah.
down here in Texas, South Texas, that's all we use. It's the exception you see a truss roof.
Right.
These crews build nothing but rafter roofs.
Rafters, the main thing here with rafters is getting your explanation on them. Is there a ridge beam or is there a ridge board?
Right.
A ridge beam, you can see the rafters rest on top of the beam. A ridge board, they're nailed to the board. If your ridge board has a break in it, or you see a set of butted ends that go together, there should always be a support under where the break is. You're looking at that ridge beam, make sure it's not twisting either. Now, when you're looking at your rafters, you make sure they're not damaged. A lot of here start checking, they start cracking due to they get excessively dry. And they do have a problem with cracking here. Now, you got to make sure there's a collar tie which is in the illustration, every 4 feet. It should be on the top 1/3 of the rafter. It's gotta be here, it's gotta be at least a 1x4. Report it if it's a 1x4. It should be actually a 2x4 or larger, okay? 1x4s are not very strong, you know, they're normally made for stuff like trim and junk like that. It's not made to be a collar tie. Now there's purlin bracing. Purlin bracing, they're also called strongbacks. You'll hear them called strongbacks. They normally rest between the 1/3 and 1/2 of the distance of the bottom of the rafter. Purlins, they must be mounted to a solid piece of lumber. You can't mount a purlin to, say, like the sheeting that you're walking on, you know, on the
No.
sheet or that sort of thing. They've got to be mounted to real lumber. They can't be mounted to, you know, the sheeting you're walking on, especially OSB. OSB should never be used in any kind of structural type deal. Also with the rafters, be aware of the ceiling joists. They're what you'll be walking on across. Now, when you're looking at them, make sure they're not scissored, not one's high, not higher than the other. They're not split, they're not twisting. That's a good way to see if there's any movement at all in your structure. They'll be twisted, they'll be scissored, one will be higher than the other. While you're observing those, at the same time, look up at your collar ties. I mean, your rafters, your rafter ends where they're mounted into the ridge boards. If you see any kind of gap, like on the illustration, that is rafter spread right there. That's what they talk about in almost every book we have. You can see where the little arrows are pointing. That's a dead giveaway that the collar ties weren't properly done. The purlin bracing is not properly done. And what happens is your rafters, your roof starts pancaking. It starts getting lower in height, and it'll push on your exterior wall. Sometime your exterior walls of your house, you'll see a bowing, and that's due to rafter spread. The worst part about this is trying to repair it. You know, don't give any recommendations on recommend to a roofer or a builder. You'll have clients, sellers begging you, asking you how to repair it. Don't mess with it. While you're looking at that, after you check out the rafters and the trusses, observe your sheeting, what kind of sheeting you have. Here, you know, you have plywood, we have OSB, and we also have planks. You could have planks running down the entire length of the roof. Planks do not move. They don't move well. Houses breathe, they move a little bit. They expand and contract. If you see planks on it, you also see a lot of checking, a lot of cracking on the planks. And simply report it. With sheeting, OSB sheeting, plywood sheeting, they should have an H-clip in between the sheets, which stop them from buckling, raising, making your roof look bad. You may have clients ask you different questions. You know, on repairs and stuff like that, don't recommend any repairs. We are just here as home inspectors to report the issues. Once you get to learn that, you'll learn to just simply shorten your reports out quite a bit. If you simply report the issue instead of talking about it, giving an opinion about it, you're still in the go. You're still doing incredibly well. You're not going to be held liable, but just simply report the issue as you see it. And you don't have to use a lot of jargon. Just when I was in the Air Force, when I was in the police force, write it how you see it. If you see a 2-inch gap between the rafter and the ridge board, just write it up like that. Also, you may see stains. You may see stains in the planks. You may see stains on the collar ties, rafters, anything up there. If you see a suspect stain, always hit it with your moisture meter. Make sure it's below 20%. I like to give a percentage of the stain and some of the dry looking surrounding material. Tell them there might, the reason I do that is because you'll have contractors, repairmen, sellers look at you and say, well, it was below 20%, so it's good, right? Well, no, it's not going to mold, but it's 3 points higher than the unstained area 2 feet from it. So yes, it's probably an active stain. You'll have people try to call you out saying that stains were not active or they weren't at 20%. Well, if they're higher than the surrounding material, they are active. Report if you see any light coming through anywhere, any of the sheetings, except the ridge. If there's a ridge vent, you'll see light coming through that. But if you see any light coming through any penetrations, any plumbing penetrations, go ahead and report them. We're not required here to activate fans, ceiling, attic fans, but I do. Most time there'll be a temperature gauge on them. Try to turn it up, try to get it to activate and see if it works. At the same time, be aware that, just because the attic doesn't mean there couldn't be insects up there. I've ran into a wasp nest the size of a 55-gallon trash bag before. If you do see weird stuff, most time it will be in the attic. I've seen hidden rooms, secret rooms up in the attic that a pedophile had actually it was a rental unit. It had been rented by a pedophile. It was a soundproof 10 by 12 foot room in an attic. It had been soundproof, and you could tell where their child had been chained up inside of it.
Oh, God.
Oh my God.
And something like that happens. Best thing to do is I tell people, I report it to police. Being a former police officer, I report it the minute I see it. Same thing if you see anything, explosives, meth labs, crow labs, anything like that. Just beware of your local ordinances, what's legal and what's not illegal. For instance, in South Carolina, there's occasionally I find a liquor still. If the guy claims it as a alternative fuel project, he's okay. But if he's using it to make moonshine for consumable type reasons, it's illegal. Better off just to report it, as a possible alternative fuel project and leave it alone. here I don't report any firearms unless I find them in a really weird spot. I have found firearms under attic insulation and stuff like that that could be part of a crime scene. Yeah, I do report that. I don't report that particularly to the police, but I will report that to the seller. You know, you find something weird underneath the insulation while you're walking around up there, it's probably good to report. While you're up there, make sure your wiring's all safe. Here we have a lot of older knob and tube wiring back from the 1930s. It's really dangerous. Don't touch it. Yeah, if you have a voltage detector, check it, make sure it's not active. But do your best to try to stay away from it. Same thing with illegal splices. You might find some stuff that's not wire netted, some insulation that's not around the proper cans. That all goes on the report. Same thing with your bathrooms and your kitchen vents possibly discharging into the attic. We all know a bathroom vent will cause mold here. It'll make here in South Carolina, being as hot and as humid it is, you add that much humidity into an attic, you're going to have all kinds of mold up there. That's why I tell everybody, wear your respirator. With attics, you know, say if a kitchen stove is venting up there, that's a fire hazard. Here, stoves have got to go rigid metal piping. They got to go directly outside. They can go through a sidewall. They can go through an attic, but it's got to be rigid metal piping. None of this foil garbage, none of the plastic, anything you might see. Anybody got any other questions so far?
No, you live in a same kind of climate we do. We have about 80–90% humidity in the summertime.
Yeah.
It is dripping.
Here, it'll get really, really uncomfortable in an attic during the summer. It can get 130, 135 degrees in an attic during the winter, during the summertime.
Right.
And it, you know, you got to stay up there. You got to, sometimes that's where the furnace is. You got to test the furnace. You got to walk the length, try to walk the length of the attic. You're going to burn up.
Yep.
I've got one more thing to show you guys. And this is, let me pull this up for you. Oh, okay. Basically what I'm talking about is when I'll have to send you that one. Okay. Sorry about that. I wasn't prepared for to share that one, but what it is you can understand it's called overframing. It has to do with rafters. And when rafters you have one roof built on top of another. The rafter ends cannot come down on the sheeting or OSB of a lower roof. I'll send you guys a diagram of it after we get off here today. But basically, the rafter ends from the upper roof. If they go to a lower roof, they can't rest on the sheeting. They've got to rest on real wood. It's actually called a sleeper board that goes underneath the rafter ends.
Mhm.
The term is overframing. It's a sleeper board, goes under rafter ends, and it prevents the load on the rafters from pushing the rafter end through the sheeting. We had a big problem with that here in South Carolina. Actually, what happened was about 20 years ago, we had a once in 100-year type snowfall. And some people ended up having 12, 18 inches of
Oh,
snow on their roof. And exactly what happened was those older roofs that had that problem, it pushed rafters through the sheeting of the lower roof. And if that sheeting even gets wet or compromised, it's a done deal. The rafter ends are coming through.
wow.
So that's why they should have. It's almost like it looks like a lower plate when we're talking about framing. A lower plate that's underneath the rafter ends, and it disperses the load to keep the rafters from moving or pushing through the sheeting. It's actually a pretty bad problem right here when you're doing an older house that's had a sunroom or something like that put on it. And we have a lot of issues with our electrical up in our attics also because we have the knob and tube wiring. People spray in insulation, they lay down insulation, the insulation gets wet and it acts as a circuit between the two. Instant spark, instant fire, house burns down. Especially with the people have the recycled cotton insulation that gets wet. You have an inappropriate splice, you have knob and tube wiring, it's a done deal. Or even if you have proper wiring and the squirrels have chewed through it, you might find a piece of casing. The squirrels have eaten straight through the Romex. Same thing. And speaking of fire, that reminds me, if you see an open chase, an open spot around maybe an attic chimney that has a gap around it, it's required to be sealed. It should be, otherwise fire could quickly respond, could quickly move from your lower room and engulf your entire attic and roof.
Correct.
Even if they spray retardant foam, those gaps have got to be filled. Wasn't quite too smooth today, folks, but I'm trying on that part. We got any questions on this? Anything
I'm good.
on that?
I had a question, but not on the attic.
Okay, go ahead. Well,
For the restrooms and the bathtub. Today I went to this house and it didn't have the little piece where you fill up the tub and you watch the drainage.
Yes.
So what do I do in a situation like that? Because
I used to carry just like a little round disc. It's actually called a basin stopper. It's kind of universal.
What is it called?
It's called a basin stopper. It'll look like a big flat disc. It's about the size of a hockey puck. And you can use it to plug up almost any basin.
Oh, that's a good idea. I was thinking of carrying something because today the lady didn't have them in her house. I'm like, well, how am I supposed to check?
Well, what you do, that's a good way to do, that was a great question, but plug it up any way you can. I carry the basin stopper. I
Basins.
actually got one out in my truck and I throw it over the top of that. Allow the basin to fill up a little, a few inches at
Yeah,
least and leave it. That way, if it's got a crawl space, you're able to go underneath.
basin.
And most of the time, the leak, a leak in a tub, they'll take those things out, and if you run water, you won't be able to tell. But if you leave some water in the basin, go into the crawl space, it's actually called a shoe. That's the name of the device that's underneath there. It's called a plumbing shoe. And a lot of times here on the older houses, it'll be leaking from the shoe, and that's where the pipe comes from the tub basin down. Most of the time it'll go to a P trap, and it'll be leaking right there at the shoe.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because I feel like that's gonna happen a lot moving forward.
One thing also to check on that, especially on like remodels here, it's illegal to have any kind of slip joint, movable type joint underneath the level of the floor joists. So if you go into the crawl, if you're in a crawl space, if the slip joint is above the lower edge of the floor joists, it's legal. A lot of times they'll box them in here. They'll build a little box around the plumbing floor of the bathroom, and it'll be recessed up into the joists. But you can't have a slip joint anywhere below the edge of the joists. Just for a fact that if it's not a permanent joint, if it's a slip joint, compression type joint, it can come off. And I've had it happen a couple of times on showers. I've tested showers.
Yeah,
And, some of the home inspectors get a little crazy. They talk about adding dye
Yeah.
to that kind of stuff. No, don't ever add dye to anything. Okay. I've seen them want to add dye to their tanks, the toilet tanks, and put dye in the toilet tanks and test the toilet tanks that way. If you don't see any water, you don't hear any water, you're okay. But if you put that dye in there, what happens a lot of times is where they've cleaned the commodes, the toilets, basins, they've used an acidic type chemical. The inspector goes in, they use the dye, it gets stuck in places where the acidic has eroded some of the enamel,
yeah.
and you end up having to pay for their toilet.
Oh, wow. What about if another thing that I saw was the fridge, instead of it in the kitchen, they had it in the garage. I noticed that.
I've seen that, big families here, they have a fridge in the inside of the house and in the garage.
I do too.
No,
I do.
today they didn't have any fridge at all in the kitchen, and I don't know if to mark it down missing, it was in the garage, both of them. Yeah, I don't know.
Was it a small
Kinda weird.
house?
No, it was a big house. They had 2 big fridges in the garage, no fridge in the kitchen. I'm like, oh, I never seen that.
I've seen it here before. A lot of people from other countries will do things like that.
Yeah, they do. They did seem like they were from other country. And what about algae on the roof? Is that bad?
On what? On roof?
I think it's called algae. It's like yellowish, greenish on tile.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, algae. If you have any algae, you have any lichen, moss, mold, mildew on a roof, always report it.
What
Yeah.
is it though? What is that? It's moldy.
Yeah, there's different kinds. First of all, there's algae. Algae is from excessive water. Lichen is a type of moss, It's part of the moss family, and it'll grow on a roof here, especially in shaded areas. Say if you have a shingle type roof, have the composition type shingles. It normally doesn't grow on it, but what happens is you get materials, you get pollen, you get leaves, you get dirt that's deposited onto the shingles,
Oh, I see.
and it grows in that.
Oh, okay.
And
So-
it'll eventually wear down your shingles, grow into your shingles, and cause them to leak. I've seen it really bad here, and we have an area that's surrounded by the entire subdivision is known for the magnificent oak trees that are around it, but it's also known for rotted roofs, rotted wooden exteriors,
Mm,
because they never dry
Yeah.
out.
Sure.
yeah.
But just be careful when you're going, some companies won't let their inspectors walk across a roof. Walk across an attic that's not boarded. You can still fall through the boards. I've seen people use very cheap particle board up an attic. Don't walk on that. You're going to go through. You can see different things. Cheap OSB, cheap particle board up there as platforms. Don't walk on them. Try to walk on the rafters. And if you can walk closer to where there's a support, I would do that too. But if there's nothing to hold on to, say if there's no way you can get across there without your 3 points of contact, either 2 hands and 1 foot or 2 feet and 1 hand, don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because
That's so true. Yeah.
They have different spacing too. Some I've seen old houses here 4 feet off center, and the trusses and rafters are 2x8s or 2x10s, and there's a huge heavy roof, but it's spaced out where I'm short. I'm only 5'7", and a 4 foot 4 foot across is a pretty big step for me to do it safely.
It's a big step.
Yeah. And
And,
then for the for the ladder to get in the attic, it's just a 6 feet, okay, or do you recommend higher?
I carry if it's
Because I've seen some attics can be so high. I'm like, whoa.
yeah,
Yeah.
I carry 2 different ladders with me. I carry one called a Little Giant. Little Giant is 8 feet tall,
Okay.
but it also can it's an A-frame type ladder or a step ladder, but it opens up really cool, and I can actually get to 11-foot scuttle hole. And then I carry like a Werner or a 22-foot telescoping ladder.
Oh, I have that one. Okay.
Um,
I think the only thing that I've seen is sometimes the attic can be like in the garage and it's really high. I wouldn't know where to put the telescoping at.
yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Like my telescoping ladder, it splits in 2, and I can actually
Oh.
raise it up to like almost a 11 or 12-foot A-frame type ladder, and I can get
Oh, I
in just
didn't.
about anything.
Oh, okay.
If it's crazy access, just written it up, it's not normal
Yeah. Yeah.
entry point.
Yeah.
And if it's not safe, don't do it.
Exactly. It's like
You know,
going on a roof. If
Yeah.
it's steep, don't go up.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was a little bold today. I went on a 10-12 roof.
Whoa.
It was pretty steep.
Wow.
And
I talked,
I
Go
wear
ahead.
what they call cougar paws. It's
Okay.
a type of shoe that's made for roofing. And I can go up them. But If
I
it,
attend,
if it's steeper than 812, I don't normally don't recommend a new inspector or even somebody that's elderly, like maybe 65, 70 years old, go up on one.
me,
And number one thing about addicts is keep your clients out of them.
Yeah.
I had about 4 years ago, I had a client. He was a very strong-headed man. He was a Cuban guy, and he went into an attic. You know, I told him, no, don't do it, don't do it, and he fell through. I ended up having to call EMS because he broke his tailbone, and he broke his wrist, and he gave himself a concussion. And you know, I told him not to do it, not to do it, not to do it, but he went anyway while I was doing my inspection. He fell through, and 2 weeks later, a law firm called me up demanding to see my insurance paperwork.
uh-huh.
You know, don't knock them down, but have documentation. I had documentation. I had text messages. I had all kinds of documentation. I told him not to do it. He wasn't allowed to go in the attic. He wasn't allowed to be there. You're not these people's babysitters, and the real estate agents have fiduciary duty to take care of them. But,
Exactly.
hey, you know, next week we're going to do plumbing systems and electrical panels, what to check above the ground and then below the ground.
Okay.
All right.
Electrical can be a little difficult, you know, read up on it. If you get any questions, let me know.
I
If-
have a
if-
question, Bill.
Go ahead.
Uh, what is the common signs of a moisture or water damage in an attic?
Stains,
Yeah.
stains or smell. Use your senses. I tell everybody use their senses as an agent. I mean, as a home inspector. But the thing is, you're wearing a respirator. Remember that. If you're doing it right, you're wearing at least, you know, one of the K series masks. If you don't have that, at least wear, you know, the type of mask, scrub mask that doctors wear, because
M95s.
it gave me pneumonia. I was out of work for a month.
Wow.
Okay, and how you can differentiate between new leaks and the old leaks, like the active leaks and the old leaks?
Okay, well,
the-
you don't have all our equipment, but we carry it's called a moisture meter. It's about the size of a phone. You place it on the leak or the stained area, and it will give you a reading.
Uh-huh.
And here, if in this area, if it's over 20%, it's going to mold up. Actually, here in South Carolina, if it's over 16% moisture, it'll mold up. But I tell everybody, you know, that they're going to give you a pushback if you write it on a repair list and they go up there and it's below 20%. But if you say it's 16% and then 2 feet from it, it's 11%, there's an issue.
Okay,
So-
thank you.
But just, you know, write it up as suspected mold unless you have it tested. Stain. Because unless you test it, they could also come back in litigation and say, it wasn't mold, it was stained, but it wasn't mold, you were wrong. You know, so just do your best. And you guys seem like a smart group. Just go with your instincts most of the time. I tell people, go with your instincts, you know, use everything that you have available for you: touch, smell, sight, hearing, everything. All little gadgets, they work great. And don't fall through the ceiling. My friend John has fallen through the ceiling. He's a good guy, but he's a home inspector. And I'm 5'7". I'm not a big man, but my friend John is about 5'3". And I don't know he's a good guy, but I don't know if he has a balance problem, but he's punched holes through probably about, in 6 years, probably
Oh.
6 or 8 ceilings. He's put a foot through. But everybody have a good night and,
You
we'll talk
too.
to you later. I'll send you the graphics, okay?
Thank you, sir.
All
Have a
right,
good
thank
evening.
you.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Goodbye. Bill, can you off the recording?
Yeah, we're recording, so I'll send it to you as soon as possible, sir.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Just off the recording and screen sharing.
All right, my friend, thank you.
Thank you. And let me know Debbie is doing fine. Can you off the recording?
Okay. Sorry, hold on. Okay.
Re- It's
Hold on.
still it's
Hold
still
on.
recording.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it turned off.
Okay.